Hey, good morning. It is Sunday. I was supposed to be going on a really lovely hike this morning, and so I thought it would be nice to begin vlogging today. However, I basically came down with a migraine last night that just got worse and worse and kept me awake half the night. So Tom has gone on the hike with some friends, but I've stayed home. One of the things that most bothers me about migraines, which I'm sure is the same for basically any form of chronic pain, and I know that I don't suffer nearly as badly as so many other people in the world, it's just the way that I feel like it steals my time and gives me nothing back. So all the sleep that I get when I have a migraine effectively counts for nil. What I really want to do right now is get some breakfast because I am really hungry. It's actually 1:30 already. I'm gonna make a smoothie. I started making a smoothie before I had my shower, and then I discovered that this has happened. So this is where we keep all our frozen fruit, and Tom has really kindly frozen all the fruit, but in the process, it's all frozen together in such a way that it is really hard to get apart, so I've left it to kind of defrost a tiny bit while I have my shower. I know that the solution to this issue is to freeze my fruit spread out on a tray in the freezer rather than to just put it in a box and freeze it, but I don't really understand how people have space to freeze their fruit spread out in a tray. Anyway, I've just left it to defrost a bit and I'm gonna see if I can prise all the fruit apart and then make my smoothie. And then for the rest of today, I'm going to edit my video, which will be up by the time I post this, about my book recommendations for peaceful, cozy books. Hey, good afternoon. It is Tuesday. I started this weekly vlog on Sunday. Obviously, I didn't film anything yesterday, Monday. And on Sunday, I think I was just complaining because I had a migraine and work was being hard, which is pretty much how the week has gone so far. And I haven't had much time for reading. But I wanted to do a reading vlog this week because I kind of feel like I massively need to get on top of the stuff that I'm reading at the moment. I am somebody who reads multiple things in one go, and I'm totally alright with that, but it's just kind of got to slightly too large a number even for me at the moment. Some of the stuff that I'm reading, I've been reading for kind of half a year, and I just need to finish it. Other stuff I am in the middle of and really enjoying. So if I go to my oldest currently reading book on Goodreads, it is, let me go get it. The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This has probably been mentioned a couple of times in a couple of vlogs. I've basically lugged this book around with me for the last half a year but haven't actually read it. I'm 100 pages in. I need to just get on with it. So far the writing is really beautiful, really lyrical. I can see that it's going to be quite sort of starkly tragic. It's talking about the effect of the Great Depression in agricultural America, and I honestly just haven't got myself into it yet. I can tell, even though I'm 100 odd pages in, I didn't really get hooked on any of the characters. I'm not yet hooked on the storyline, and even though I can sort of sense that it's a classic, I'm not inside it yet, and I know that I just need to dedicate a good chunk of time to getting into it, but I'll be completely honest, that chunk of time is not going to be this week because I'm currently reading on my Kindle Childhood, Boyhood, Youth for Emmy Reads and Carolyn Marie Reads Dickens versus Tolstoy challenge that they're doing, which is a 4-year-long read-along where you cover the entirety of the work of Tolstoy and Dickens. I just really love the opportunity to read all of Dickens's works and all of Tolstoy's works. I've read half of Dickens, and I've read Tolstoy's kind of famous novels, i.e. War and Peace and Anna Karenina. So I'm going into it in quite a nice place of not actually needing to read one of these massive novels every single month in order to keep up, but being able to read a few of each author every year. I have only just started Childhood, Boyhood, Youth, and it is today the 25th of January. I need to finish it by the end of the month, so that's kind of going to be my focus for this week. The book is a kind of fictionalized memoir of Tolstoy's childhood, and so far I'm enjoying all of those little character observations that so mark Tolstoy's work, and his kind of generalized, globalized comments and ways of looking at things that just kind of elucidate all these thoughts that you've half had to yourself but never fully had. That is my main read for this week. looking through the other stuff that's going on my Goodreads currently reading. One of them is Harry Potter et le coup de feu, i.e. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire in French. I'm kind of permanently reading Harry Potter in French as an absolute background read that I just pick up when I want to do some reading in French. And to be quite honest, I probably won't mention this again or finish it until the summer holidays. Last summer holidays I read The Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban in French and really enjoyed it, but it's a kind of project that I enjoy getting into when I have more time, because it takes me about 3 times as long to read stuff in French as it does to read it in English. However, occasionally I just really fancy some Harry Potter, and it's quite nice to have one on the go that I can fall back into when I want to. Next up, we have another book that sort of just ended up on the back burner without me reading it, even though I'm actually super excited to finish it, and that is Titus Grown by Mervyn Peake. It's the first book in his Gormenghast trilogy, which looks at this kind of crumbling castle in this fantasy kind of mythical world, which is full of these super eccentric characters. I don't think there's any kind of magic system or even mythical creatures or anything, but it's a super atmospheric, really descriptive novel so far, and it reminds me of Dickens's writing so much. It's like if Dickens were writing fantasy, this would be it. So it's going to be really fun to read that alongside also reading more Dickens this year. I recently finished reading Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Thane, which I cannot wait to talk about in my January wrap-up. It was phenomenal. I already think it might be the best book that I read this year. And I don't know if you get this when you've read something so brilliant that for a while everything else just kind of almost leaves a bitter taste in the mouth, even if it's wonderful, and you kind of need a break to allow the genius of what it is that you've just read to settle. And that was my experience with Do Not Say We Have Nothing. So all of my adult reading has kind of gone a little bit by the wayside since finishing that, which I finished last week. There is a bit of children's literature reading going on though, as you will have seen in my last video on kind of books to read if you like cozy vlogs. I'm currently reading The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. That is a reread. I'm enjoying it so much. I'm kind of part reading it in my beautiful folio edition, but I have also found a free audiobook version, and I'm sometimes listening to bits of it when I'm doing any of the kind of mindless part of my job at work, and it's just the most enriching, uplifting experience ever to reread it. I love Burnett's writing so much. A Little Princess and The Secret Garden are just 2 of my absolute favourite, not even children's books, just favourite books ever. Something I've been really bad at in life so far is rereading things. I hardly reread anything, and this year I think I'm starting a bit more of a trend on rereading. I just finished rereading Jane Eyre, which is another of my favourite books ever, and now I'm rereading The Secret Garden, and it's just bringing me so much joy. Mary Lennox at the moment has just moved to Mistletoe Manor. She's really miserable, and she's described as a sour child, but she's starting to realise that the reason that she's miserable and sour is that she's been completely lonely all her life, and it's just the most touching thing ever that anyone who's ever read it will remember for sure, as she kind of befriends this robin out in the garden, and it's the first time that she's ever had a positive connection with another living thing, and it's just so beautiful. Persuasion is the final one of my books that I'm on the go with at the moment. As you can tell, I'm reading way too much stuff in one go. I know I need to wrap some things off and then not start other stuff in their place. Persuasion I'm kind of enjoying so far. I'm not that far into it. I just haven't got that absolute adoration of Jane Austen that I feel I am 100% the stereotypical sort of person who would feel that way about Jane Austen, and I don't, and so I really want to give Persuasion a good go and hopefully be persuaded by it that Jane Austen is one of my favourite writers. So yeah, that is where I'm up to. It's Sunday again. Oh my gosh, this week has gone so quickly. So I'm going to round off my reading vlog today. Obviously, it's already been like a week and a day since I started it. I have had such a crazy busy week with work, like even yesterday and today. I've had to work full days pretty much at the weekend, which is a bit depressing, and therefore obviously haven't made enormous progress with my reading, not as much as I would have hoped. However, I do have some updates. There is some stuff that I've finished and some new stuff that I've started, and I'll give you a proper update on that in a moment. For now, I need to quickly go and make a tomato soup because One of my fiance's colleagues has come down with COVID, and her whole family are isolating, so we're going to make them a tomato soup for their dinner tonight, but it is already 4:45, so I need to get on with making that absolutely ASAP. And then when I've done that, I will come back and do a final update on my reading. So, to update you on what I have and have not read this week, starting with the only thing that I'm actually reading the text of, which is, of course, Childhood, Boyhood, Youth by Leo Tolstoy. I'm now about 25% of the way through, and I haven't spent that much time reading it this last week, so it's kind of my task tonight, and it may well seep into tomorrow as well. But I'll see if I can finish it by the end of January. So far, I'm enjoying it. I'm not like wild about it, and I think the reason is that normally one of the very best things about Tolstoy is his scope. And obviously, as the only Tolstoy that I've read up to this point is Anna Karenina and War and Peace. Those are both two absolutely epic novels that contain so much, and most of my favourite works of literature in the world fall into that category, just something massive that succeeds. Whereas Childhood, Boyhood, Youth has a much smaller scope. It's just focusing really at the moment on this one boy's childhood. One thing that I'm really enjoying in it is how well Tolstoy manages to capture like the agonies of childhood, these moments where somebody says something to him as a child, or where there's a time of immense shyness or embarrassment, and just like what's going on in his head at that moment has taken me back to similar feelings of childhood agony that I'd kind of forgotten. And I think Tolstoy does that fantastically, like, and incomparably, to be honest. I haven't really seen another author write about childhood in such an evocative and memorable way. But beyond that, it does feel very quiet, not very much is happening. Not that this is a criticism per se, but it's just it doesn't feel like Tolstoy in the way that his massive novels feel like Tolstoy, but it's also his debut work, and so it's not surprising. You can definitely feel the potential that is there in this narrative, and I'm looking forward to finishing it and seeing what happens as he grows up. Then moving on to my audiobooks, which is definitely what I've been able to consume a lot more of this week, because I've discovered that I can kind of listen to either a reread or a children's novel in the background whilst I'm doing a reasonable chunk of my work. And so I finished The Secret Garden. Everything I'd remembered it being and more. I kind of feel like I need to go and reread A Little Princess now, because I've always classed that as my absolute favourite of Frances Hodgson Burnett's work. But I sort of wonder whether from an adult perspective A Secret Garden might not be even better than that, because it takes a few characters who are not very likeable and yet really breaks down why they're bitter and unkind and selfish, and looks at sort of tangible actions that they can do to restore themselves to a happy and kind and loving state. The story is just so gorgeous. Every single moment of it was lovely. The message of the healing powers of nature, of friendship, of kindness, of selflessness, of play for children. Oh, the whole thing was so wonderful. Then, even though I said that I was trying to finish things off and not start new things in order to get my list of books down, I have actually started one new thing. So I've started reading The Swiss Family Robinson by Johann Weiss, I think it is. This is a book that has been on my to-read list for literal years. Not because I particularly thought that I was going to love it, but because it came out in 1812, and it's one of those books that comes up so often in like a ton of Victorian literature as being a book that inspires children and inspires children's play. Really recently it was referenced in the beginning of Childhood, Boyhood, Youth. They were playing at Swiss Family Robinson. It was available on the free online Audible, which is where I'm listening to all of my audiobooks at the moment, and there's quite a limited selection, which is actually quite nice because it's kind of honing me down to exploring some options of books that I otherwise am not quite sure that I would have got round to, but as there's not that much choice then and they're there, I'm like, okay, why not? And the Swiss Family Robinson so far, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm finding it really, really funny, and it's not supposed to be a comedy. It is very much of its time. I'm liking it a lot more than Robinson Crusoe, which I read at university and was not a fan of. I found that a real snooze. This is at least more interesting than that. As you can guess by the title, it's about a family who end up on a desert island following a shipwreck, just like Robinson Crusoe. But they're a family, and it does make it a lot nicer that they're a family. I think it makes it a lot more interesting. And also the fact that it's aimed at children, so it's kind of like mini adventure. And it's very satisfying watching this family as they get settled and they set themselves up and they build their camp and they get their animals and all that sort of thing. It's just so dated that it's hilarious, and the main reason is that there's a super patriarchal dad who is just the biggest show-off you have ever come across, and it feels like every other line is one of the children attempts to do something, he does it a little bit wrong, and the dad goes, "Now my dear boy, let me tell you my extensive knowledge on this subject, and after that you will be corrected and you will go on to do it well." So that part of it I'm finding really funny. The part of it that's starting to grate on me is all the killing. So it feels super similar to Children of the New Forest in terms of just like an absolute ton of the plot is about how they are surviving on a day-to-day basis in a very much almost hunter-gatherer, farmer kind of way. Whereas in Children of the New Forest, which I really like, it feels like the characters are doing their hunting and their animal husbandry and stuff like that with real reason in order to enable them to live more comfortable lives. Weirdly, even though this book is set on a desert island and therefore clearly this family needs as much food as it can get, it just feels like the boys are just shooting everything that can possibly be shot at for the sport of it, and it gets really repetitive. Like, I cannot stress enough how boring it is, how much they're just shooting these animals all the time. So yeah, that's Swiss Family Robinson so far. I'm actually already about halfway through it. It's not a difficult read or listen, and I'm really enjoying the Audible narrator who's reading it because he's put on this really kind of well-to-do, snobbish voice, and I feel like it just suits the father's character so much because the father is really grating on me, but at the same time, to such an extent that it's actually funny. Yeah, so that's the children's book that I'm listening to in the background. Then I have also made some progress with Persuasion. I think I'm on about chapter 9 now of that. To be honest, I'm just finding it exactly the same as I always find Jane Austen. Like, I'm enjoying it. It's nice. There's some good character observations, but the plot is pretty much just people visiting other people's houses. All the characters feel quite put into their molds. It's like, here you have your hypochondriac woman, here you have your overly obsessed with class father figure. And it's interesting and it's enjoyable to listen to, but I'm definitely not feeling like this novel is, at the moment, kind of completely overturning my general experience of Jane Austen so far, which is that, yeah, I enjoy her writing, but she doesn't blow me away. I think one of the reasons might be as well, I've been really trying to reflect on why. It like really bothers me that I don't love Jane Austen. I've been really trying to reflect on why, and I think another one of the issues that I have is that I just find the whole sort of marriage market for women thing really dull. And I know that Austen's doing it to point out the ridiculousness of this situation, but even within pointing out the ridiculousness of the situation, it's not something that I particularly enjoy or get pleasure out of reading about. I do just feel very grateful that I don't have to experience the marriage market in the way that women did in that era. And yeah, reading about it is definitely not something that I find super fun or super romantic. I know this is sacrilegious to say, but I don't find her men very romantic. I don't find the way that love is portrayed especially moving in Austen's novels, or not so far at least. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm still like definitely looking forward to finishing it, definitely looking forward to seeing where the plot goes. Anyway, that's where I'm up to with all of my reading for this week, and this has been a pretty bitty and all over the place first attempt at a proper reading vlog. I hope that by the time I patch it all together, it will sort of flow a bit more smoothly than it feels like it has done in the filming of it. I hope you've enjoyed, and soon I should be bringing out my January reviews video, which will look in a bit more depth at all of the stuff that I have read and successfully finished in January, and a bit more general kind of analysis and historical backgrounds of some of the books that I've been reading this month. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to making that. Actually, I love sitting down and properly reviewing and thinking about the books that I've read. So thank you so very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.